It looks like it's 6 o'clock now. Bring the Town of Hennessey Board of Trustees regular meeting July 13th, 2023. Town Hall at Council Room at 6 p.m. One call to order and roll call, please.
Randy?
Here.
Bert?
Here.
Cliff?
Here.
Harold?
Here.
Dave?
Here. Report from Tennessee United Board. They didn't have a meeting, but I did see something that was going around about Jack's proposal on the banners. There was, you didn't get that?
I don't know.
From,
Yeah, it was a
Jack-
little,
Kathy
there was
Howard?
a conversation about that banner frame I proposed, but no action has been taken yet on it.
Okay. Did you have anything?
No.
Consider approval for the consent agenda, minutes of the June meeting. B, approval of the claims as follows. June purchase orders, $74,782.85. July purchase orders, $46,089.15. Number 3 is July RSTF fund is $119,204.28. Library fund is 0. July street and alley fund is $3,394.32. Accept the following reports.
Cliff, excuse me, sir. I have a question up on number 2, the July purchase orders. When we approve this, consent agenda, can you clarify for me, once we approve this item 2, July purchase orders, are we approving those purchase orders, the 46,089, does that cover up to today in the month of July? Or are we approving future spending between now and the end of the month of July? I don't understand why we've got, to be honest with you, I just don't understand that.
That's up to this point.
That's up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody?
I've got a question as well. Are those purchase orders or claims? Because I think our previous agendas referred to them as claims.
So they're claims, but they won't pay the purchase orders until you guys.
Until the claims are approved.
Yeah.
Correct, okay. One more question on item 3, July restricted sales tax, 119,204. Do we have any, do you know where that went? I mean, I know 16,000 out of restricted sales tax, give or take, reserved for ambulance contract, but was it payments on, I can't think of what we've approved that, but it'd be
Did we
payment.
buy any major capital or spend any major street repair money or? Is that the Trustees project?
I'd have to go with it. Yeah, it's capital outlay, yeah. We bought the top police car.
So, and we paid for that, so that's come out
Because
of,
that come out of 2023, my understanding.
well, that's, yeah, and this is July, so that would be a big part of it. Okay, sorry.
Okay, no problem. Accept the following reports from the library, the treasurer, and the police. Any other comments? I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as provided.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Cliff?
Yes?
Randy?
Yes.
Bert?
Yes.
Harold?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes?
Citizen comments?
I have one quick one. I wanted to thank Brian and Troy and others for the work they've done on the pavilion site. In about a week, they've pulled up most all the concrete foundations and everything out there and have been hauling it off. So I just wanted to acknowledge their hard work. And that's moving along now nicely.
Great.
nobody else, we'll move on to other scheduled, town administrator report.
New employees with Georgie Tillman, who has been hired as the new AP payroll clerk to help take a little bit of the weight off of Shelley's shoulders. And Brandon Scott, he was the only one that put in an application for the fire chief, and he was way more than well qualified. So he's been appointed as the new fire chief. No resignations or dismissals. Purchasing, I just had questions about that because, you know, like the police car, stuff was already voted on. I don't know if I needed to include that or not. But, we also did the high service pump, but it's not going to be, the bill's not going to be due until probably 1st of August. The REAP waterline project started on the 21st. They've done a lot of work. They've really made a lot of progress on that. Getting everything done. The only issues we've ever had with that is people saying, why are there big bubbles in my yard from boring, you know? So they're doing a great job. They're getting stuff done fast. And I met the crew. They're a very nice group of guys, but they're very conscientious about what they're doing.
David, who's the contractor on that, please?
Marsall.
Marsall, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The drainage project on Mitchell, South Mitchell, we got the pipe and the fittings earlier than expected. They didn't think it was going to be until about now, but we got them in a couple weeks ago, and they're already starting on that. That part that we had cut out and then put back in.
Right.
There's 3 building permits there. The first one at 508 Manning, I got a question on. If you guys want to deny that, we don't. Oh wait, no, that's Denise's. Three building permits. I haven't heard anything more on the sewer dump ordinance. The food truck ordinance has been submitted to you guys, revised by the attorney. He added frozen flavored treats and ice cream to the definition of food. He eliminated the coverage of any nonprofit food sale like a church bake sale, etc. Prohibited a licensed food vendor from operating within 200 feet of an event stage on public property unless approved by the town administrator. And he excluded from the license requirement any vendor already operating a commercial kitchen, restaurant, cafe, or other eating establishment in town like you guys have wanted.
I think that, yeah, that's separate item on the agenda.
But, yeah,
Okay.
but that's what we got, where we're at on this. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you, David. Number 6, other scheduled business, discuss, approve, deny, reject, and/or take action on the following. Discussion on the Oklahoma Open Records Act, 51 OS Section 24A1. David?
Yeah, this is my agenda item, and I invited, like I told everyone, I invited Mr. Dodson here. He's in from the state auditor and inspector's office, the forensic division. He works for Ms. Holt. And he's here to, did you want to talk at all, or you just want to answer questions, sir?
I mean, I can, and I didn't know if we were going to be limited to, it sounds like limited to the Open Records Act. And I'd sent an email, did you all get that by chance from me yesterday?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make clear, you know, that my office is here to, not represent anyone specifically. Obviously, I'm here for anything that we might be able to help any of you regarding. And I guess, is there a town attorney, is that right?
Yeah.
It's not here.
Okay.
It's not here.
Typically doesn't attend the meetings?
Right.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to start with questions, I don't know if you have specific questions that you wanted to address.
I have some questions. It doesn't matter to me if I go first or last. It's up to you.
Go right ahead.
You want me to go ahead and
Yes,
start?
please.
Okay. I've got several, so you might want to let other people do theirs in between some of mine. Mr. Dodson, the first thing I would like to discuss with you or ask about is law enforcement body camera videos. My main question is the way I was looking at the law, there's actually 2 different trains of thought. One is there's a trustee train of thought, and then there's a citizen train of thought. So my question, sir, is do I lose my citizen status when I want to review an LE video as a town trustee? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, and the first important thing especially for the 5 of you, is to know that when it comes to viewing any records that are considered town records of the town government, each of you has the legal authority or the legal right to do that. Now, of course, there comes a point where, if town hall, depending on how many employees work in town hall, or whoever the department heads are that would be responding to those requests, if it comes to the point where it becomes voluminous enough that maybe those employees are having a hard time keeping up with their day jobs, so to speak, then, you can discuss with them the idea of, set schedules or times as far as trying to review some of these. But yeah, there is an Attorney General opinion that says that the individual board members have what's called in the law co-equal authority. Now that's limited, of course, to an extent, because as you guys well know, 3 or 4 or 5 of you is what's required to take any sort of official action. None of the individual trustees, have the authority to go tell department heads what to do, because you're only 1 of 5. But when it comes to government records of the town, each of you would have the ability to see those things, to view those things as part of your job, for the fact that you need to see those records to help you do your jobs, because you're the governing board. You're at the top. You're the ones that are right under the citizens, of course. Now, there are going to be certain circumstances, specifically I'm thinking with law enforcement records, that will be confidential to the public. For the most part, that's not going to apply to you guys, but of course, confidentiality will still stick with you, which means just because you have it or see it, you can't share it with the public. That confidentiality would apply basically to the town government. There could be some scenarios specifically with law enforcement records, and I can't even think of any specific right off, that there might be.
On videos would be like nudity.
Yeah, there might be a case that could be made where the police department would say, at the very least, this includes ABC, XYZ, you may not want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And there may be even instances where there would be laws outside of the state laws that would make some of that confidential. I'm not thinking of any right off, there may not be. Because again, you guys are at the top of the government.
Can
Okay.
we ask questions
Yes.
in between regarding, is that okay with you, or do you want to go through all yours?
Well, to be honest with you, he led into my second question, but I will defer to you if you
Oh,
want.
no, go ahead.
All right.
Maybe.
Well, to be honest with you, Bert, I'm going to ask him, based on, what we just heard, can the town board, based on a 3-2 vote, restrict me from seeing a law enforcement video that I want to see?
No. And that's based on a state attorney general opinion, which in Oklahoma carries the weight of law until the legislature and the governor undo it with a statute, or until it's undone by a district court or a higher court.
So, sir, excuse me, if a resolution was passed with a 3-2 vote like that, then we would need to rescind that resolution, is that correct?
Yeah, my opinion on that would be that the resolution wouldn't really carry any weight, because it conflicts with state law.
Okay, and I want to make sure that my colleagues hear this from me. Here's my attitude toward law enforcement videos, is I think that we should be able to look at them individually or as a group. Then, if we see something on the law enforcement video that may require disciplinary action or counseling action on one of our town employees, then it needs to be voted to go into executive session, and then that's where we discuss it. That's my opinion. In other words, without seeing the video, we can't even decide whether or not we need to go into executive session to possibly do a disciplinary action. We may look at the video, and the police officer might have been perfectly well within his rights and performing inside our police procedure manual. Mm-hmm. And, in other words, the video would release any thoughts of, well, it's possible that we may have to discipline this guy. Mm-hmm. Well, if he's doing his job correctly and professionally, the odds are real high that we wouldn't even have to do anything. And we could get, if it was a citizen complaint, then we could get back with the citizens and say, hey, look, you guys need to pay the fine, and, drop it there because, this, and this happened.
And certainly the board could do that at the front end.
Okay.
The board could decide to have an agenda item and discuss going into executive session and discuss that in executive session. There are a couple of options on that that come to mind. One is, of course, personnel matters. And then another would be if the town attorney recommends a reason to go into executive session. Those are two of the provisions in the Open Meeting Act. But something that you're kind of alluding to, I think, or at least that I would say to all of you would be, of course, when you do that, if it's an issue pertaining to an employee, the law says that you have to state on the agenda who the employee is, either by name or title. And so then, of course, and you know, in a town this size, probably everyone knows everyone, and then it's gonna be, oh, they're looking to fire so-and-so. And that may not be the case at all.
Yeah.
So yes, it's, you know, I guess I would say, certainly if you can avoid that, for that reason alone, but that's certainly up to the board if you wanted to discuss that in executive session or not. And of course, two of you at a time, you can go view the video together if you wanted. Obviously not three, because, you know, the whole Open Meeting Act thing, but.
Well, I would guess that 99% of the time, our police officers are probably in the right and very professional and complying with policy. But if I did see a video that I had a problem with, of course, I would make the decision to come to the board and say, hey, guys, you know, we would have to do it in a meeting, I know that, to talk to all five of us. And, but in my mind, it's common sense to be able to look at the video and make a decision on whether or not I would want to pursue it to the board, and or they look at the video in, you know, as they need to see, and then they may want to come to the board and convince me that we need to go into an executive session. You know, it's a two-way street, and I understand that. And the last thing I ever would want would be for our law enforcement officers to think that we're out to get them. That's not me, and I know it's not none of these guys.
And that's, I mean, that's certainly, you know, that's understandable. And it's understandable that you'll have issues on town boards where it could be 3-2, 4-1. That's not uncommon, and I know that a lot of people want to try to avoid that. But you know, it's something that happens in a lot of small towns, even larger towns. I mean, this is one of the larger ones of the small towns, I would say. You know, we have a lot of towns in the state that are much smaller. So you know, if there's a 3-2 vote that has occurred with regard to that, you know, it must suggest that there's some disagreement, which, you know, can happen. So I guess my concern would be any of those of you, if there was a 3-2 vote who are in the 3-person majority, it could certainly change. And then I would say, again, each of you individually, as a trustee, needs to have records and information to do your job as town trustees. You know, it's easy to get bogged down into disagreements or spats, and I certainly understand that. We see that all the time. But yeah, as far as state law goes, the Open Records Act and the Open Meeting Act, you guys individually are vested with something beyond a normal citizen. And rightly so, because the citizens elect you to represent them in this position, and everyone in the town government ultimately is going to answer to you.
So Cliff, that's actually all I have on the law enforcement videos. If you want to let these other guys ask some questions now, I defer to you guys.
Okay. I would, David, you referred to the 3-2 vote on the policy as a resolution. It's not a resolution. It was never given a resolution number. That would have to go to our attorney and be drafted legally. I submitted that policy, and let me tell you why and ask you a question or two. All body cam footage potentially is a matter of personnel. And my thoughts with the policy that I recommended was not to restrict anyone from seeing it, but to require as a town policy that the board see it as a group in executive session because of the possibility of personnel issues.
Okay.
I feel like executive session requires confidentiality, whereas my understanding, and I've been on the board a long time, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, just because I'm old doesn't mean I'm right, but my understanding has always been that individual trustees have zero power, as you alluded to earlier, but can the town develop a policy that states body cam footage is a potential matter of personnel to be viewed by the town board in executive session.
My immediate thought, but I want to make clear that I'm not saying this unequivocally because I would want to do a little bit more research, legal research on that. My immediate thought is no, but first let me say too, and I didn't mention this earlier. It depends on what the body cam footage is and if the police department is saying that it would be confidential to the public. So, and you mentioned this, I think there are kind of two levels here. Any body cam footage or dash cam footage, any law enforcement video record or law enforcement audio record, any of that would be available to the public, automatically, of course, would be available to the town trustees.
Absolutely.
So if this is some of the footage that falls into one of those narrow exceptions within the Open Records Act, where the government can keep it confidential, I guess that's the narrow area that we're discussing here probably. And one of those areas that comes to mind is if there's an internal personnel investigation that's occurring, that's when a law enforcement agency can keep that body cam footage confidential, so long as that as that investigation is going on. Once the investigation is complete, then it's not confidential.
So, are you saying the town trustees have more rights than the public to see body cam footage?
Yes, the town
Individually.
trustees, yes, the individual town trustees have more authority to see any records of the town, even records that would be confidential to the public. And again, that's so that you can individually do your jobs as the elected town trustees. But as far as if
Is body cam footage open to the public? So if John Q. Citizen walks in here to the counter and wants to fill out a request to see body cam footage, are they allowed to see that?
most of it is public record, yes.
Okay, so then my question is, we as a board, if we're going to look at this individually, why not wait till a meeting and put it on the big screen for the public to see?
Yeah, and I mean, I certainly understand that position. And I can look into if the law would allow for a board to adopt such a policy. Again, my thinking right now is that it would not, but I certainly want to double check on that and confirm that before
If
I
you could,
say
please.
definitively. Okay.
And because I think this opens up for individual trustees to wanting to see footage,
Yeah.
cherry-picked
That might be
footage
confidential.
that they want, that of someone that they may have a personal interest in.
And I understand that.
And I think that's what we need to avoid.
Okay, and that's an important point too for each of you individually, with not just confidential records, but really anything else that you do. If there's confidentiality in the law, that the public would not see it. Another obvious example that comes to mind would be executive sessions. As you guys know, you can't go out of an executive session and talk about what happened. So you do have more authority, so to speak, as trustees, but you have more of a burden as well. If there are records that are confidential to the public, then even when you see those, you can't share them with the public, or you can't tell the public about them because they would be confidential to the public. So,
Okay, that brings up another point, David. I'm not trying to take
Go ahead,
over
sir.
your time.
You go ahead.
That brings up another point. What is the recourse for a trustee who does that?
yeah, that is a good
Who breaks
question.
confidentiality?
Yes.
Because that has happened,
Mhm.
that they break confidentiality out of what has been said
Yeah.
or discussed in executive session.
Yeah, and I don't, I obviously want to shoot clearly straight here, but I also don't want to take away from the gravity of it. But the short answer is there's not a lot of recourse. The recourse that would come to mind initially would be if someone is harmed by that, for instance, an employee, or maybe even a member of the public, if they are harmed by that confidentiality, they theoretically could bring a civil lawsuit against the board member or board members who do that. And that would go for any executive session. If there's a provision in the Open Meeting Act that talks about the ability to buy property, and you can have certain people in the executive session, there are certain things that can be kept secret there. So the same goes to there. If you hurt somebody's business interests as a result of talking about something.
Sure.
There are some instances in which Prosecutors' offices, the DA's office could file charges on that, but I can't even think of one right off the top of my head. I do know that there's a provision of the Open Records Act and a provision of the Open Meeting Act that say that anyone who purposely violates those laws can be charged criminally with misdemeanors. But then, of course, you'd have to make the argument that they were violating that act. And you probably could with a violation of confidentiality. At least theoretically you could.
In discussions I've had previously with our city attorney, said that at a bare minimum, the board could vote to censure a individual trustee
Yes.
for breaking confidentiality. Do you agree with that?
I would agree with that. As you probably realize, that doesn't do much.
No.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it.
It's
you
kind
know.
of a vote of no confidence.
It is. Because the reality, of course, is each of you individually, you answer to the voters. And so, could a town have 1, 2, 3, 4, or all 5 members who are out doing those things? Yes. And if nobody runs against you or the voters continue to re-elect you, then the voters are making that decision. And you know, I say that somebody who's harmed by violating confidentiality could bring a civil lawsuit. You know, it could theoretically go much higher than that. Certainly if there was a business that was involved. I mean, you could talk about the possibility of a large tort claim against the town government itself, resulting in a lawsuit. I mean, violations of confidentiality could turn into a huge problem, depending on the circumstances.
Have you by chance read that policy that was,
I don't think so. I don't think I've seen a copy of it.
is there any way we can get a copy of that for him to read it right there?
You're talking about the one that was passed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I've seen that.
Is there any way we can get that?
And if not, you guys have my email address, so you can at least send it to me. I'll get with somebody.
I can send it to you.
Yeah, any one of you, if you have my email address.
So, like, what's the deal like on the phones? You know, people that are texting and doing all that kind of stuff during the meetings.
Yeah.
Sitting here.
Yeah.
Is that when they do that, is that public record?
If it's discussion of public business, yes.
How do you know that when they're sitting there?
Yeah, it's tough to know. It's hard to know. And that would go for personal, and this gets difficult for towns and smaller counties who maybe don't have a website and an email system. I don't know if you guys have a town email system. That's ideal, but most towns don't. So you're probably doing town business on your personal email, which is allowed. But then, of course, those email messages would be public record if they discuss town business. Same goes for text messages, instant messages, any social media communications, anything that involves town business would be public record.
So like my deal, you know, I've even tried to bring up that all town board members have a town email address instead of our personal. Because if for some reason, I'm just going to use it for example, you want to see my email because you know that it was something was sent to me on my email, you're allowed access to all my emails, not just that one, right?
Yeah. If it's a town email address. Now, some of those email messages, if they don't discuss town business at all, theoretically they wouldn't be public record, but because they're hosted by the town's email system or website.
I would have to hire a lawyer to find which ones they get to see.
And that's the bottom line. I mean, that really is the bottom line, and it's an unfortunate situation. You know, if I could make all the laws and the rules for a day, I think it would be best to say that all local governments are required to have government emails, but that's not the case. That's not the law. And so it's tough to know, and there's really no way to know other than sue. And that goes for really any town or any school or any county or even state agencies, theoretically.
Well, I think it would be very easy for us to have our own emails under the town of Hennessey.
Yeah.
I don't see any problem with that.
Yeah.
I feel like the phone comment may be directed at me. Mine is laying here on the counter. I am the only funeral director in Hennessy.
Oh, no, Bert.
And I have to.
I'm 24/7 too.
I mean, I gotta keep it up.
I got text messages right now, you know.
It's silent, but yeah, okay.
So,
And I
you know.
understand if it's a big.
But I'm not sitting here texting another board
Yeah,
member saying.
but
And
I'm asking.
And that's the key.
Yeah,
I get them too.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, there's nothing that prevents you guys from texting anyone else outside of the meeting. There's nothing that prevents you from texting people in the audience. There's nothing that prevents you from texting each other during a board meeting to discuss anything besides town business, like, hey, let's go to dinner afterward. Although you
buying?
can't discuss town, although you can't discuss town business when you go to the dinner, and it can't be more than 2 of you. Yeah, I'll use the state credit card, right? Just kidding, just kidding.
That's on record.
Yeah, just kidding. But no, and if it's a decorum thing, if it's a concern that it looks bad, I mean, again, theoretically, you could pass policy that discourages it, but what are you gonna do if any one of you still has the phone and you violate the policy? Probably censure. That's really all that you could do. And again, ultimately, the voters, each of you 5 answer to the voters, whether that's good or bad or whatever.
I mean, how's the deal with agendas work? Do we send it to our town clerk? Do we send it to our town administrator? Do we make the phone call? How does that actually work?
That's really not specified in the law. So it's really whatever works best. Typically, the clerk is the one that's considered to keep those records, but it doesn't have to be. It's not required by law. And in fact, the law actually says that anyone can keep the official minutes of the meeting if say, the clerk can't or doesn't or for whatever reason. You know, certainly there are restrictions in the law as far as how soon the agendas have to be posted. So you have to make sure to stay within that. And you know, of course, you can say, so if you don't get them in by X amount of time, then you can restrict it. That can be a town policy, and you know, that makes sense because obviously you will have to get the agenda posted by that date, which means you have to give enough time for the agenda to be prepared and supporting documents included in the packets that are probably given to you prior to the meetings. But really, there's no hard and fast rule on that as far as the law goes. The administrator could do it, the clerk could do it. It could be email, it could be phone. Email's probably best, just in case there's a dispute later, you can say, here it is in the email. But none of that's a requirement by the law.
Cliff, I have several more questions, so get me back in the rotation,
Go ahead.
okay? All right. Number 3 up. This is a change in topic, sir. Talking about certain persons to release records. I know the law says that we're supposed to have designated persons, board designated persons as records custodians, and that's supposed to be done in writing. I know that. The law also says that not a record custodian, but record custodians, plural, should be available at all times during normal business hours. And I understand what you said earlier. Sometimes a person might have to wait or come back. I understand that. What would you consider as a normal response time?
Yeah, that's definitely you didn't intend it as a loaded question, but it can be.
Yeah.
And I say that because in the state auditor's office, I actually handle our records request. So I'm on that end of that as well.
Yes, sir.
And weeks can go by. So it really depends. It depends the most on what the records are. The more records there are, the longer it can take. The fewer records there are, the shorter it should take.
Yes, sir.
Then you have to consider things like, is there confidential information in the records? Now again, for you trustees, that would be different. But as far as the public having a response time,
Right.
and you know, sometimes the legal counsel has to be involved in
Right,
that
exactly,
decision as
and
well.
I understand, that's actually part of my next question was,
Okay.
I understand that there are, here's how I worded my question on the next one, is talking about having people available at all times during the normal business hours. To me, that leans toward some on-the-spot service. I'm not saying that it leans toward 100% on-the-spot service. Especially, I'm talking about, the law calls it out, non-complicated requests, which would be something like, let me give you an example. Well, I can't think of one.
An example that would come to my mind would be the minutes from the meeting 2
Right,
months ago.
Right, yeah, say,
I mean, that would be quick.
yeah. But, and to be honest with you, I don't expect special treatment just because I'm a trustee. I mean,
Yeah, and certainly for any of you trustees to go into town hall and say, I demand all of these records right now, I mean, first of all, that's
Yeah.
rude.
Yeah,
I mean, they
I would never
work
do that,
for,
no.
you know, they work for the town government. And yeah, and again, depending on what the records are, you know, it could take a while. Especially, yeah, again, if there are a lot of them and if there's potentially confidential information in them. And there's more than just the Open Records Act also, by the way, that pertains to confidentiality. There are quite a handful of federal laws that require confidentiality in certain circumstances. One that comes to mind, probably doesn't apply to you guys, would be health-related records. So say, for instance, if you had a town hospital, I mean, you've got federal laws, so you have to look beyond just the Open Records Act for potential confidentiality.
I think like now, our problem is our town treasurer and our town clerk are elected, but in the past, they've always worked for City Hall.
Okay.
Now, they don't,
Yeah.
you know, and so the question is, who do you go ask for town records?
Yeah, because I think most people would automatically assume that it would be the clerk's position, because the clerk is the keeper of the records, so to speak. And if they're financial records, perhaps the treasurer. But the Open Records Act, and I mean, look, the bottom line might be you guys, and particularly town hall employees, might bristle at times over the Open Records Act and the Open Meeting Act. I get that. Again, I handle the records requests in my office. Sometimes we get the information and then 2 days later it's like, where is it? It's like, well, we're working on it, but we also have other work that we're supposed to be doing. So, you know, I mean, I get that. I absolutely get both sides of it. And myself, I actually served in your guys' position once a decade and a half ago in my hometown. So I've been on your end, I've been on their end. So, I can see all aspects of that.
Sound like we got the right guy here tonight.
But the Open Records Act is clear on that, that there's supposed to be somebody available. So the reality is, per state law, if the clerk and the treasurer aren't in town hall during normal business hours, then there would have to be somebody else who would be there as the record custodian. And as you mentioned, the law says that there's a possibility to have multiple. I know that some towns, certainly counties, the Board of County Commissioners oversees the county, but as you guys know, the other county officials are elected. The sheriff is elected, the assessor is elected, the treasurer is elected. They handle the records in their offices, so it's not going to go through the county commission. Some towns, certainly bigger ones and some of the smaller cities, they will have multiple records custodians, and it will be the department heads. The police chief will handle the police department records, the fire chief will handle and then some of them try to have it go through the clerk. So it's really all what you guys as a board, as a whole, as a majority, decide on how you want that to be handled.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
In that, I'm just thinking in our situation, because our clerk works full-time in another job, which is perfectly within our codes. Would it not be good to have everybody, all of the personnel in town hall, to be the custodian of the records, so that anybody could walk in and make that request to anybody at the counter? Then should those records be reviewed prior to be given out to look for confidentiality, personnel, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, the short answer is that would be my recommendation, yes.
Okay.
It would behoove
So maybe the
you
town
as a board.
administrator review,
Yep.
anybody in the office could
Yep.
take the request from the citizen, pull those records,
Yep.
and then, okay.
Yes. And again, that's a board decision. A majority of you would decide how you want that handled. If you ask me for my opinion, outside of what's required by the law, just the opinion, yes, I would recommend that. And then that way you can have your, all of your records, you can keep track of them well. Another question that oftentimes comes up, hadn't been asked here, but another question that comes up from the public is, do we have to tell the government why we want the records? Because oftentimes it's like, well, why do you want these records? And especially, smaller towns will run into that. You can only ask insofar as to ask, is this for a commercial purpose? Are you going to be using these public records to try to make money in some way? And of course, then it's still the honor system. You can say yes and no. But other than that, there's really no mechanism in which you demand that the public would tell you why you want the records.
Well, that's actually my next question, and I actually want you to expand on that just a little
Okay.
bit. I was going to tell you, our records request form actually has on it, what's the purpose for records requested? And I found in the law where it's not supposed to be asked.
Yeah.
So I just wrote down a note here, does this violate the law? I already know it does. And if yes, how can we fix this?
Yeah.
Does it take a board vote to change that form, to get that off of there?
I mean, technically, it shouldn't. Because again, the form what you would want to put on the form is this for a commercial purpose, yes or no?
Right.
Other than that, the law doesn't allow, technically you could ask and the public could voluntarily tell you, but it's not required in the law. And I know maybe that's not the answer that any of you want to hear, I don't know. But that's what the law says.
Okay.
So it's purely if it's for a commercial purpose or not.
One more follow-up, same topic. Is a log required? If a citizen walks in and requests, does a form to request some records, are we supposed to maintain a log of
No.
those events?
No, much to my chagrin. I wish it was in the law, but it's
Yeah.
not.
Okay. All right.
Would I recommend it? Yes, very highly.
Okay.
If for no other reason than because when my office comes in and audits places, it's like, can you prove that you responded to these? And really, I would recommend that for your sake, for the government's sake, so that if there's a dispute later of, well, I requested this, this, and this, and town hall can say, well, we keep a log, and here's the records of what you actually requested, or we don't show that you requested it.
Yeah.
That really is more to protect you guys.
Can I throw something out there?
Yes, sir.
Could the town have a form when we hand those records over to the citizen for them to sign that they've received the information requested on such and such day?
The short answer is yes. Could a citizen refuse to sign it? Sure. But yes, you could have a form. We oftentimes use those forms in my office. Probably a good idea, actually.
Real quick, another question. David brought up a good point. If our form asks what the purpose is, and that's not allowed, but if it's for commercial purposes, then that is allowed. My question is, does your office have a template that you recommend for an open records request that we could get?
I mean, yeah, I could provide one. Yes.
I've got one also from Guthrie.
And I was going to say, yeah, there are other.
I've looked at other towns.
Yeah.
I've got a real nice one from Guthrie.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about that, later or in our next meeting or whatever.
And if you guys want to leave on there the purpose for the request, like I said, you could, and you should probably put on there it's voluntary.
I don't see a reason for having it on there.
And again, maybe we all would like that it be on there. I get it. I mean, I get maybe wanting to know what the reason is. But yeah, the law doesn't allow for that to be. And the reason it really doesn't require a vote of the board to change it is because, as you guys know, I mean, you could vote to do something or not do something, but if a state statute says otherwise, then
Now, council members don't have
it
to
doesn't matter.
request it, do the request.
Correct. Now, that's the sort of thing that, if the town, if the records custodian or custodians asked you for it for tracking purposes and you wanted to be helpful and fill one out for those purposes, you could, but no, it's not required as far as
So,
making
like if
it
I
easy to
ask,
fill them
if
out.
I request something, does it not need to be provided to all board members?
Doesn't have to be, no. There's also nothing that would prohibit the records custodian from doing it. So let's say one of you went to the clerk or police chief or whoever the records custodian is for the records you want, and you say, as a trustee, I want to see these 2 records. Then that records custodian could send it to the other 4 of you and say, hey, this trustee asked for this, I'm giving it to you as well.
Could the board set that as a policy?
Yes.
That any trustee who requires or requests a record would be required to be shared with all?
Yes, you could require the records custodians, town employees, to do that. You couldn't require one of you, you couldn't say, if any trustee gets this, the trustee has to share it. But yeah, whoever the records custodian is,
Yeah.
you could
I
make it
wouldn't
a
want that
policy.
workload myself. I mean, I understand what you're saying
Well,
about.
it's illegal, right? I mean, we can't share paperwork amongst each other anyway, right?
No, outside of a meeting, more than 2 of you can't discuss town business in any
Yeah.
shape or form.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
If that's the case, we can have board meetings on our own computer.
Yeah, yes. No, and it's, I mean, frankly, it's pretty easy to violate the Open Meeting Act.
Yeah.
I mean, if 3 of you went out to dinner together and discussed town business, I mean, unless someone saw you, and even then, somebody either has to sue you or the DA would have to file charges. And it can be done, it's in the law. Is it done often? No, but it's also difficult to prove such things. Because you could also say, well, the 3 of us were having dinner together and not discussing town business. It's like, okay, we'll prove otherwise. So.
Cliff, I'm going to keep going until you stop me.
Okay.
You've already touched on the next, I'm going to combine my next 2. I want to get back to personnel and payroll records. I want to add payroll records. Can you talk restrictions? You've already covered confidentiality already. I think I'm understanding the confidentiality requirements for personnel records. You guys are all clear on that? Okay. let's talk about payroll records for a second. Let me tell you why I want to talk about it. You know, we're getting ready to do some hiring here in some of our more senior positions. And I personally would like to see what we've been paying in the past to certain positions. And so my question is, do I have the authority to ask for those records? And I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about positions. And there should be a data pool. Shelley, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm guessing that there's a data pool out of the database on the payroll. That would be a fairly easy document to pull up and print out instead of being a huge workload. Am I well within my authority to ask for payroll records?
Yes.
And if there's social security numbers involved, they could be redacted. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yes, and for the most part, those records are going to be available to citizens as well.
Yeah.
There are some provisions in the Open Records Act that would make bits and pieces of that confidential to the public.
Right, like social security numbers.
Yeah, and you guys should be, I guess, in a position where you would be individually okay with town hall redacting social security numbers.
Yeah.
But that's, again, you as the trustees, you're a step above citizens who are not trustees. And I'll give you an example, specifically with my office. Many years ago, I think 30 plus years ago, my office was auditing the State Tax Commission. So you had basically two agencies that were butting heads, because that's what my office does, we butt heads with all the other ones. So the Tax Commission said, well, we're going to give you certain bits of these documents, but we're going to withhold some of that sort of information, social security numbers and that sort of thing. And at first blush, it makes sense. It's like, well, why does the state auditor's office need to see this? Well, the state auditor's office position was, if we're looking for, say, for instance, ghost employees or fraudulent taxes, then we may need to actually compare social security numbers. The Attorney General's office issued an opinion that ruled in favor of the state auditor's office. The Tax Commission balked at it, took it to court and went all the way to the state Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, yes, the state auditor's office would be allowed to see all of these records as part of their audit. Now again, once those records, which would be confidential to the public, come into my office's hands, we're required to maintain that confidentiality. Same goes with you as trustees. If you get records that would be confidential to the public, you have to maintain the confidentiality.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's all I have on those two topics. I'm going to move, the next topic I have is duty to maintain records. I want to give you some examples. And my question is going to be, how long should we maintain these records?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'll tell you before we get into specifics that there's not a lot of great legal guidance on that.
Yeah.
There's some, but there's not a lot. I wish there was more. I wish there was a lot more.
Yeah, I'm talking about some of our smaller operations that actually bring, a cash flow into town. And let me give you an example. Auctions of property, excess property auctions, vehicles and equipment. Town functions would include recreational vehicles, sewage dump, recycle facility, cemetery, swimming pool, credit cards. For some reason I wrote down 2 years only question mark. I'm thinking I saw the 2 years deal in the law, in the Open Records Act law. Does that ring a bell with you, sir?
Well, the Open Records Act addresses that to a slight extent, but not much. That's going to come from other statutes, unfortunately, which means you have to dig for them. I can provide to you guys a list of the requirements that do exist. And then I've even seen some towns that have pretty good policies on that. Because of course the board, if statutes don't require it, the board can require it. And so I've seen some towns that have some pretty lengthy policies.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes the law relates to the type of record.
Yes.
Utility records might
Yes.
have a different
Right.
length of time.
Yes, sir.
Court records might have a
Absolutely.
different, in other words, there's several different ones.
That's an
that
important
apply.
point there. And when you say several, it's several on top of several.
Yeah, exactly.
10
Yeah,
years,
it can
10 years
really,
and 15 years is even mentioned in the law. on
yeah, it
certain
can
items.
depend on what types of records they are,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
I wish it was more streamlined, but it's not.
Okay, sir. I may talk to you by email on that.
Okay, yeah, I can provide that information to
Okay.
all of you in
Yeah.
town hall, whatever we need to do on that.
Okay.
And the only other thing I would say there is, it would also really, I understand hard copy records, you can run out of room. Of course, you can digitize stuff now. That's sometimes easier said than done. There's certainly nothing that prevents any town employees who keep records, there's nothing that prevents you from keeping records even if you're not required to by law. And again, there's nothing that prohibits the board from voting to enact a policy that would require retentions of certain timeframes if the law doesn't require it. You could still do that. And
You could, and correct me if I'm wrong, you could also, you could strengthen the state law.
Yes.
But you could not shorten it.
That's the key. If statute says a certain time frame, you can't shorten
You
it.
can't pass a policy
You
and
can
say,
do
well, we're
something
only gonna keep
above
this for
that.
6 months.
Yeah.
If the state statute says 2 years.
Yeah.
But you can't extend it to 4 years. You can make it more loose, but you can't make it less authoritative, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Dodson, you already answered my next question. We talked already about charges of misdemeanor possible and civil suits possible on not complying with the law, and I appreciate your comments on that. My last question is...
And really quickly on that, there have
Yes, sir.
been some instances where DAs have charged on that, so it's not unheard of.
My last question, I'm talking about citizens and/or trustees, and I'm talking about our fee schedule. I have not reviewed our fee schedule. I should have before seeing you here tonight. I was remiss on that. But I know it's reasonable. I think it's 25 cents a page or something like that. I can't remember. But let's say, here's my scenario that I want to put to you and see what your comments are on it. Let's say I'm just a citizen, not a trustee, and I walk in and do a records request on something, and it's hard for the town employees to find it. They don't know where it's at. And they put a lot of effort into finding it. Somebody works it for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours trying to find this document.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to levy that person's hourly wage for finding those records on the person that's asking them?
Yeah, I hate to say what I'm about to say because you would like to have a black and white clear-cut answer. That has not been definitively answered in the law.
Okay.
Which is a weird thought because the Open Records Act has been around for a while,
Well-
and it's been litigated all the way up to the Supreme Court and the Court of Civil Appeals. There have been conflicting opinions actually about the answer to that.
Wow.
Because on its face, the statute would appear to allow a person to pay for the time required to pull the records.
Yeah.
But there's an appeals court case that pretty strongly suggests otherwise. So that's unfortunately kind of up in the air.
Well, I don't expect perfection from these people that work in here. I mean, they're human beings, and somebody's not going to know something. And you know, when there's a lot of time spent looking for records, records can get lost. I understand that. I'm retired military, and I worked for the Department of Defense for several decades.
Okay.
So I'm very familiar with lost documents.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, I don't expect perfection. I'm worried not only about myself, but I'm also worried about, you know, our citizens walking in and you know, the folks that work in here, they're gonna get those records that people ask for, but I'm uncomfortable thinking about what I'm thinking about here is if something's misfiled or poorly filed, or employees not knowing where to look.
Yeah.
You know, we do have new employees.
Yeah.
And I understand that. You know, they can't just go to a filing cabinet. There's a gazillion records in there too, by the way. And so I understand that. So your answer you're talking about, there's really no definitive answer to what my question is. I got you, sir.
For the most part, I mean, like I said, there's an appeals court case that pretty strongly suggests that that's not allowable.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, frankly, is not really a good thing for local governments, especially smaller governments, because you probably don't have the personnel to respond to huge, voluminous records requests.
Yeah.
And as far as the policy goes, most policies, fee schedules and policies of that nature, and this goes all the way up to state agencies, because I actually had to do a comparison for my office a few years ago. Most of them are really largely outdated, and by that I mean they take what's in the statute, and the reason for that is, in my opinion, the statute is largely outdated. Statute was written when records were typically hard copies. That's largely not the case anymore, at least certainly in bigger state agencies, everything's digitized. But you'll see records fee schedules that say 25 cents per page, it will basically take what's in the law and put it on there. Well, none of that really is an issue when you're providing it electronically.
Yeah.
And then another thing to remember about the law, the Open Records Act, again, much to the chagrin of probably governments, technically citizens can ask to view documents without paying for copies of them. Now that can get iffy because again, if there's something confidential in there, they still can't see the confidential information. So there are instances in which you would have to tell the citizen, I understand you want to view it, but we still have to redact information from it. So there are things about this law that are, I don't want to say conflicting, but can be problematic or confusing.
Antiquated.
Yes.
Can I ask a question? You're talking about the Board of Trustees being a step above citizens and being able to be held accountable for the confidentiality. Like he said, we only have one employee in here who has been here for very long at all.
Okay.
The rest of us have been here a week, basically.
Okay.
I've never gotten any requests from citizens for records. I've been here long enough, so I don't know. But since it's so critical for the town employees, for the ladies in the office, to try to keep their sanity while doing the day-to-day functions, what would prohibit a trustee from coming in and say, I need to look for this file? There's the file of yours, help yourself.
Nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing. What I would say, let me say what I would tell, let's say that I was speaking to a conference of town officials. It doesn't have to be you guys specifically. So here's what I would say to town boards or town clerks or town treasurers, town administrators, or any town employees for that matter. The Open Records Act and the Open Meeting Act can be burdensome. It can create scenarios in which certainly individual trustees, but also citizens can hound you, can absolutely hound you and badger you. And I completely understand that. Completely understand it. I feel for you. But the problem is, ultimately, the law is not extremely concerned with that. It's just not. And so what we tell people, when my office speaks, again, at conferences where we're talking to all the towns in the state, as much as that citizen might drive you crazy, you largely need to try to, I hate to say grin and bear it, but the reason I say that is because when that doesn't happen, and when town hall pushes back, and again, rightly so, I understand, then that's when my office gets called in. And a petition circulated, 10% of the citizens of the town sign it. In a town this size, it's not gonna be a lot. And then we're dragged in, then you're required by law to pay our bill. It's tens of thousands of dollars, high tens of thousands of dollars, all because there was some citizen or some person that was driving everyone up the wall crazy, and town hall pushed back on it. And again, I understand the desire to do it, I understand the problems it can create, but what we tell towns is it can create a whole lot more problems when you go down that route.
So pushing back, in your definition, is just not having the ability to find it?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly if it's a record that exists or should exist, then obviously you have to give it if it's not confidential. If it's a record that you say it can't be found or it doesn't exist or it's not found, then really the only recourse would be that record doesn't exist, and then that person could file a tort claim or file a lawsuit to try to get it. Or report it to the DA, and the concern would be it's a purposeful violation of the law. And again, then you have to go into the court system to figure that out. It's not a perfect answer, but that's where we are.
No. Yeah, we just need to hire about 10 people to redo all our files.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, everybody that makes a request for records has to understand that the reasonable time frame that they have access to it
Yes.
varies. It's
Yes.
Reasonable is not defined.
Nope, not at all. It's
And
not
I
at
don't
all.
know who's thought of that file
And-
system, but
Yeah.
Well, nobody
It's
wants
been
to
the-
know.
it's been.
I mean, the Department of Education, been reading information about their requests. They've got 300, 400 requests, and 99 have not been filled yet,
Yeah.
and it's been
Yeah.
months.
Yeah. In my office, for instance, probably everyone knows of the Epic Charter Schools investigation. I mean, we had countless numbers of records requests, and several of them were for all of the work papers.
Yep.
Well, we're talking well, I was about to say hundreds of thousands,
Yeah.
in the high hundreds of thousands.
Easily.
And there was, we're talking student records, so, you know, that of course is gonna require confidentiality redactions. I mean, it took us months to fulfill those requests, so absolutely, it can, the law, there's a reason the law doesn't define that. And there's a reason why the Attorney General's office and the appeals courts haven't defined it. Because it really can't be defined, because again, it depends on what the records are.
And when you said 10%, that's only 10% of what the last vote that we had, right?
You're talking for the petition audit?
Yeah.
That's a provision of the law, but it's actually 10% of the citizens, of the registered voters who live in town limits. If that can't be determined, it would fall back on the 10% of the people who voted. Really, the only scenario in which that couldn't be determined would be special purpose districts, like sewage districts. For a town, that should never be an issue. It would be 10% of the registered voters of the town. And then,
Because we got a lot of registered voters that just don't come out and vote.
And then that petition can't just say, we call for an audit.
Yes.
It's got to say, we want this looked at, or this looked at. In other words, the state auditor's office isn't going to come in on a petition that just says, we want to be audited.
Yeah,
There's got to be issues named that can scope, set up a scope for them to review, which then again gets into the tens of thousands of things that we talked about. The more things they look at, the more costly it is.
yeah, and the state auditor's office actually drafts that petition. Of course, with input from the people who are wanting the petition, but the petition would actually come from my office. We would draft it and it would be, and yeah, the more open-ended the petition it is the more complicated it is, the more time-consuming it is, then we're really taking up town hall's time, and oftentimes even the elected officials, and it gets costly. It can get very costly, unfortunately. And so anytime that can be avoided, you know, I guess I could joke and say, well, it's a job security for my office, but it's not. We have numerous petition audits that are pending as we speak. Those are never going to go away. We have 500 some towns, 77 counties, 500 some school districts, and then however many state agencies. So there's plenty of work as far as that goes. So anytime we can help facilitate bridging communication or trying to get answers, whether it's for citizens or individual board members, we absolutely want to do that. Because if we can avoid those, that's the preference. And that's the preference for the local governments as well, because of the cost, if nothing else.
Cliff, that's all of my questions, sir.
I have no answer, mine.
Bert?
I think we've gone over most of them. I do remember a case where a citizen did ask for records from the past 20 years. And
Here?
Yes. And
All records?
no, and in all honesty, it's been several years back, and I can't remember exactly what it did pertain to, but I think it had something to do with water sampling or something. And this person came in with, you can't charge me for time, you have to fulfill this, you have to fulfill it timely, but I want this for 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, just like we've alluded to, that just simply can't be done.
Yeah.
And where there are different time frames that we're required to keep and provide records, I think it would be handy for our staff that we could look those up at state law, of course, to have a list of those, and if it's whatever, well,
Yeah.
we have those for 7 years, we have those.
Yeah.
Now, can a citizen come in under the confidentiality part and say, I want to see what you're paying your policeman, John Doe, and I want to see his salary records? Is that confidential, or is that open?
No, and it kind of
That's
seems...
open, correct?
It is, and it
Okay.
kind of seems
Okay.
counterintuitive, because it's like, you know, all these employees, their salaries are gonna be known to everybody in the world. Mine is, you can find mine on the internet. It seems weird, but that's what the law says. The reason, of course, is because the taxpayers are paying town hall's employees, paying my salary, so it is public record. Now, there are certain elements of that are allowed to be kept confidential. I think certain withholdings, perhaps, and that's specified in the Open Records Act. We can find the specifics on that. So bits and pieces of that would be confidential to the public, but for the most part,
Basically, I can find out how much you make an hour, but I can't find out how many minutes.
Yeah, that's the short of it.
Okay. I don't feel like the town of Hennessey, unless I missed something, has ever denied anybody. I know timeliness can be
Yeah.
a huge problem.
And that's a sore spot.
And,
Like I said, I fulfill the records in my office, the record request, and it's a sore spot. Even with people who are friendly to us and like the work we're doing, and you know but yeah, it's because when you want the record, you want it, and you want it now, and that's not always possible. In fact, it's rarely possible to get it immediately. Again, some records, as we mentioned earlier, meeting minutes from 2 months ago, those should be pretty quick and easy. But yeah, for the most part, they're not going to be quite that easy. I mean, and this is much easier said than done, and the staff in town hall will probably be mad that I say this, so that's why I preface this by saying I have to answer the records requests in my office. But what we like to advise towns and counties and schools is, as much as possible, and again, you have to consider confidentiality, because that's the law. Short of confidentiality, as much as possible, when that citizen comes in every single day, or twice a day, or 3 times a day, and says, I want to see something, 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 as much as possible, you should say, come on in and look. And again, I know that's easier said than done, but if you can avoid creating additional problems down the road because that citizen or those people or even elected members get upset, it's still preferable to do it that way.
Well, how do you do it when a lot of that's on computers?
Yeah.
I mean, how do
And you're right, you don't want to turn the computer over to the public. So certainly if it's something that can be emailed, that's ideal. If it's a hard copy. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, we have seen instances in some of our investigations where citizens purposely create problems for the local governments. That absolutely happens. And they may ask for, well, I'm going to see 20 years worth of records. And I don't want copies of them because I don't want to pay for them, which they're allowed to do by law. I want to view them. And then town hall will spend a week getting the records ready and put them in a room and say your records are ready. And guess what? The citizen never shows up to look at the records. Is there anything you can do about that? The short answer is no, unfortunately. Because who's actually being harmed by that? All of the taxpayers are, all of the ratepayers are, because they're the ones that are paying the salaries of the employees at town hall who are compiling those records. But we see it. We see it relatively often, unfortunately.
Can I say something though? I don't think here at the town hall it's that we're trying to not give you the records or we're trying to hide anything. We don't know where they're at. That was never in training 101, where the records are. We don't have a town administrator who has the knowledge, who has this anymore. When Tiffany was here, I guarantee you, any of y'all could walk in there and say, hey, I need this record from this year, and she would have tooted her little rear in there, and she would have got that record in a heartbeat. It's not that we're trying and we're not trying, but it's hard for us to go through 10,000 files in there when we don't know what we're looking for. And for instance, some of the information people ask, they don't even know what they're wanting.
Yeah, and I understand that. I absolutely understand that. And certainly when it comes to town trustees, it's easy for me to waltz in here from Oklahoma City or Tulsa and say, oh, kumbaya, everybody should just get along. I understand that's not always the case. By any means, that's not always the case. But as much as possible, even if one of the elected officials, clerk or treasurer, or say a town employee may despise a trustee, or vice versa, a trustee may despise you, as much as possible, if you can let the trustee in to look through the records, that would be preferable. Because again, the confidentiality isn't going to apply to the trustees as trustees.
Right.
To the public it will, and when the trustees have it. And that would really, help you guys who are the records custodians. May not want to do it, may not like doing it. Again, I get it. I completely get it.
I have a question that I just, since you have said some of this, would your office, if we, as a board, were to set up a policy, our forms, and how we would like to see records or requests handled, could we send that to you for review?
Yes.
And ask your opinion, and then get that back before it's implemented?
Yes. And the reason why we do that, there's no law that says that we're supposed to do it or that,
Correct.
that you guys, but
I'm
the
just looking
reason,
for help.
Yes.
So that we don't have something
and ultimately, of
wrong
course,
or
yes.
something on the form that's not.
Yeah, and ultimately, of course, you know, the town attorney, whoever the legal counsel is, whether it's an individual or a law firm or whatever the case, but you can't always get the answers as quickly as you want or as much as you want, not that we would be quick. But the reason that we do that, and we will do that, the reason that we do it is because, again, our overriding thought here is if we can avoid something snowballing or blowing up and turning into something that drags our office in and costs you guys $75,000 and 6 months of our time, then it's much smarter on the front end. For instance, coming to this meeting, this is a perfect example of it. You guys obviously aren't paying my office for me to be here, but if we can avoid you guys spending $75,000 on a petition audit by maybe coming here and trying to help answer questions, that's absolutely what we'll do. So yes, we would help with that sort of thing.
Well, and you alluded to the city attorney, which I totally understand, but you all deal with this on a daily basis.
Yep.
Our city attorney may see
Absolutely.
this once or twice in
Yep.
3 years.
No, you're absolutely correct, and it's the sort of thing, and I'm an attorney, so I'm not trying to besmirch my fellow attorneys, although I could do that all day long, believe me. So I'm not trying to be critical of town attorneys, but you're right, they deal with a lot more, and some of these things, we could be asked, and we could give you an answer in 5 minutes, whereas it might take them an hour to research it. As a similar example, you know, sometimes when DA's offices, because DA's offices are the legal counsel for county government, they will sometimes ask us questions about specifics of county government. They're the legal counsel, but DA's offices typically, as we all know, handle criminal prosecutions. We can answer their questions on some of those specific issues much quicker than they could. So yes, absolutely, we would do that when we
Okay,
can.
and I've got one more. I know I keep saying one more. I'm sorry. I just keep thinking of new things, but, and this doesn't so much pertain to your office, that I'd like to ask Frankie. I'm hearing something I've not heard before about the files being difficult to locate, and it sounds like maybe our system's somewhat antiquated. Frankie, would anybody in your, who would provide a service? Here's what I envision, that we close town hall for 2 days, maybe have somebody come in, work the drive-up window, and have somebody come in and help us revamp, reorganize,
Yeah.
reset all of our filing system. Where do we pull in that professional person? Does your office have anybody that, do you ever do that, come in and do a quote reset on?
I mean, I would say that we've helped several governments recreate or set up policies and procedures for filing. And I mean, we certainly have best practices that we could recommend. But I mean, your issue is not so much an antiquated system as it is, you just don't have a lot of history. I mean, your people that would know what happened 15 years ago or know where that box is, they're not here anymore. And so that's why it's taking a day to find something that would have taken somebody 15 minutes to find something. So, you know, it's really kind of figuring out what you've got going on now and what the filing system is, and then comparing it to maybe what it ought to be. Well, what would be a best practice for that? So, yeah, I mean, we could do stuff like that. I mean, there are other groups that specialize in management and organizational skills and things of that, but I don't know if it'd have to be terribly complicated. I just kind of have to look and see what's there now and then what ought to be there.
There's what's always been termed a permanent file that has things such as leases and water rights leases and that sort of thing in it that maybe are a 99-year lease.
And in a lot of cases, we've probably got copies of that stuff, just as part of our role in the town over the last 20 or 30 years. We've been, you know, every time you sign a lease agreement, every time you sign a water rights agreement, that impacts the financial statements or the audit. Therefore, we get a copy of it. We keep it in an electronic permanent file too. So if you happen to get a data request and you guys are struggling to find something and it's finance related, just call us. We might actually have that somewhere where we could go dig in our electronic files to see. But
That's actually a good point really quickly on that. Even if it's not finance related, that can apply if it's anything that might have gone through any state agency. State agencies may have it, Department of Environmental Quality, Water Resources Board. So yeah, that's certainly a possibility. And sometimes it's quicker to find that way. Even if you know, it's like, well, we know it's in town hall, we know it's here somewhere. It might be quicker to go somewhere else to somebody else that would have it.
But I don't think you're gonna be able to address the problem of not knowing where something from 10 years ago is simply because there isn't anybody here that was here 10 years ago. I mean, even if you revamped everything, that's only gonna start from that point going forward, where you're gonna be able to say, okay, we've got something. But I don't know if there's anything wrong with your system as it is. I think it's really just there isn't anybody here that was
Anybody that's used to it.
around. But certainly if there's ever a finance-related request or something like that, and you're struggling to find something here, let me know, because we might have a copy of it electronically somewhere in our files.
And as you can imagine, when my office comes in to do these forensic audits, whether it's petition or DA request or whatever the case may be, if the files are not in good condition or good order, I mean, that can certainly create problems for us. And I'm sure your firm sees that.
And that lengthens the time you're gonna be here.
Absolutely, and then it costs more.
Yeah.
And there's actually one town, in a totally different part of the state that I'm doing the forensic audit of right now, and they actually have the unique problem of having too many records. Not sure if you've ever seen that or not, but in this case, what they would do is every time a board meeting would end for years, they would collect the packets and they would throw them in a box or a drawer somewhere. And they literally have a huge, the thing that they've rented out in the backyard it's basically like a semi-trailer, and they open the doors and said, well, here you go, here are the records. And of course, I'm there, a month ago in the heat, and I mean, okay, I'm gonna go in and look for meeting minutes and meeting agendas, and they have 5 to 10 copies of everybody. Yeah, so it's possible to go too far that direction too.
Cliff, I have a comment to follow up on Mr. Crawford's comment about best practices.
Hang on just a second. I want to go ahead and go down here to Randy. I haven't had Randy to... Okay, then go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Crawford mentioned the term best practices. That, believe it or not, that's a military term, DOD term. And I've actually already engaged in some of that myself. And I plan on, for our next monthly meeting, I was going to put on the agenda some more discussion on filing systems. I've looked at Guthrie and I've looked at Crescent. Both of those towns have what I consider an outstanding filing system. It's on what's called a shared drive, and you can give people read-only access to that shared drive, and as long as they can go on the internet, they can get in those files and take a look at them. I've been rummaging through Guthrie's and Crescent's records for the last 2 weeks, and they have outstanding files, nice, neat, concise, tons and tons of information. And if you guys, I'm going to put it on the agenda, and if you guys want to see it, I'll show it. We can discuss it first. If you guys, don't want to see it, I won't show it. But I'd like to put it on that big screen right there for everybody to see. And I'll run the mouse and I'll run you through what I'm looking at.
Are you, when you say you've looked at their records, I think I misunderstood it first. You're looking at them electronically?
Yes.
You're not going over to those towns and
No.
looking at a filing system?
No.
Okay.
No. Now, I do know that I can go in those towns and request records, just like I can here in Hennessey.
Sure, absolutely.
But I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I looked at Crescent is because their stuff is so neat on the internet. And I found out, I went over there to talk to Mr. Wallace, he's the city manager, and I found out that he actually has an IT background. So it's like, wow. So anything he's got in hard copy, he scans it into PDF, and guess where it's at? Bang, it's right on that share drive. It's a share drive. By the nature of the term, they share it. And anybody and everybody can have read-only access.
And they've both
That
been,
restricts people from that.
Both of those cities have been really successful in actually going back and scanning in all of their older records too.
Well, yes, sir, Mr. Crawford. I was getting there.
Yeah.
But for our town, that would be a huge workload with all of our paper files. But we could purge the older stuff that would be legal to purge, and we could scan everything else and put it in the correct file.
On that,
I would love to show that to you guys if you'll give me the opportunity.
I'd like to see it. David, that kind of goes back, I don't know, maybe it's when you stepped out. I asked if there was any professional help we could get in reorganizing our costs. But you're right, it's gonna be a huge burden. I don't know why maybe the town couldn't contract with an employee, not an employee, but someone, hire someone on a temporary basis, 6 months, whatever, to come in and scan and digitize all of the copies of our files.
And you may want to ask Crescent and Guthrie if that's the route they went, or did they just assign it internally to an existing employee?
Right now, we don't
I
have
can't remember.
anybody internally that's got the time.
Yeah, I can't remember whether
That's
Guthrie and
fine.
Crescent did it internally or whether they actually had help also.
I did drive over there, and I was looking at some of their facilities and stuff, and I just stopped in City Hall, and Mr. Wallace, the city manager, he was on vacation, so I did not get to talk to him. But I talked to one of the other ladies that worked there, and she explained to me that he had an IT background, and he's an expert at filing records on a share drive. And I was even gonna hit you guys up and possibly even invite him to come over here and sit in one of our meetings and show us some of his stuff too. But, you know, I'll work with David on that and make sure that everybody's on board with that. But I can do a show and tell next meeting, pretty good. You guys will be familiar with what I'm talking about. If you're interested.
I think digitizing our files would be amazing.
In the Department of Defense, we used high school kids, summertime workers to do that.
Interns.
And obviously,
You know what? Let me
Might
throw
not be a
something
bad
out
idea
there.
here either.
The school has that intern program now
Yes, sir.
for kids that can get out, I think an hour early or two or something during school year.
Yes, sir.
And if they've got a Cracker Jack IT kid, that may be something we could talk to
Yeah,
them
of course,
about.
I would recommend that our official records people would be the ones to do the filing. But we can talk some more about that.
yeah, and again, of course, you'll want to consider confidentiality.
Yeah.
But yes, without knowing the cost or the time to do something like that, it would seem like an ideal scenario. Certainly for the records custodians, they would love that if ultimately all the town records were online or in some easy way that,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Okay.
And that's the wave of where everyone's going. I mean, everybody is moving to the cloud-based, service as a system where literally everything is in the cloud somewhere. That you can access.
Scares me to death.
I understand. I understand the effort.
I get it.
Well, and Bert,
But it's coming, Bert, so you
you guys
better
have
get
you guys
ready.
have heard me in this meeting several times before. I used the word modernization. And I know that sounds like punishment. But that's what we're talking about here.
I agree.
It really is.
And you don't, one point you mentioned as far as purging some of it, you don't have to do that either. And you may decide that it would take more time to try to go through every document and say, well, does this fall within a requirement for keeping it or not keeping it? Because even though the law requires that some documents be kept certain amounts of time, there's no law that says you can't keep every document forever. Now again, you can have too many documents, certainly if you have multiple copies of them. And if you're able to move to a system where it's an online or digitized, you're gonna want some sort of order to it. So when I say, it might take more time to do that, you're still gonna wanna at least glance at a document and say, okay, this is a contract, or this pertains to meeting minutes. But you're not required to spend a lot of time going through them and purging them if you chose not to do that.
In my business, we have digitized every record we've got since 1913. So it doesn't sound like punishment.
It really is punishment.
But
Yeah.
what I'm getting at, when you get a call and somebody wants to know something about something that happened in 1940, you can just pull it up. So I think it'd be awesome. And then, once it's set up, it would be easy to keep up with. Scan your minutes, your agendas, and all of your payroll and all that.
Your time's gonna be going backwards, not forwards in this endeavor. The forward part's gonna be easy. It's
Correct.
what do we do going back?
Shall we do that on lunch hour?
Okay, if we don't have anything else, I'd like to go ahead and continue. We got to go to D, discussion of the town clerk.
Certainly.
Thank you.
And you guys all have my email address, so feel free to, holler anytime and ask questions. And if it works for everyone, I'm gonna leave because you guys probably all want me to leave anyway.
Not really.
We don't want you.
Thanks,
But
Mr.
you know how to get a
Johnson.
hold of me, so.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yep.
I was thinking about going on the internet and looking at what you make and having you stand by everybody dinner.
I mean, I guess we can do that. That's why I gotta hurry up and leave before you find that info.
And we need a town administrator, no,
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Ma'am,
See you later.
Ma'am, can I get your name before you go?
Oh,
My name's Macy Gleason.
Macy Gleason, okay.
Hi,
Thank
Macy.
you.
Thank you. Okay, we got B, discuss of town clerk duties, responsibilities required by OS Title II, Section 12109.
This is also mine, I've got some handouts. David, you
You think you guys need me for anything else?
I just want you to say one thing while he's handing this
Sure.
out, that our quarterly reports has all of the information that David was asking for, all the town employees and the administrator and everybody's salary on it. And at the end of the year, everything's in that booklet that we just got in June, correct?
Yeah, the budget that you adopted in June goes by position in the very back and kind of shows you all the different positions pay. And of course, that feeds up to the front where you're budgeting how much it's gonna cost to pay personnel, how much it's gonna cost to pay materials and supplies. So yeah, the budget's done, the budget's there, and of course, it's public record also. So somebody could request a copy of the budget to see that information also. But there's no personally protected information or the PPI stuff
Right.
that you're not allowed to put. You won't find any of that in the budget, but you will see salaries and wages by position, which is how the budget gets formed. So, yes.
Mr. Crawford, I'm sorry, did you say that was in the back of our new budget book?
It should be. In other words, the way the budget document works is that it's very condensed up at the front and a lot of
Okay.
summaries. And then the further back you go, the more and more detail you see. And usually in the very back, there ought to be a positional scale that shows all the positions and their pay. But
I'll take a look.
no personally protected information would be in there. So
Very
it's just a salary by position.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask you that before you.
Oh, yeah,
do
no,
that, so-
okay, so, I mean, if you need me to stay for other stuff, I'll stay, I just kind of wanted to be here and listen, so.
You're more welcome to stay, thank you.
But you don't have to, correct? I mean, if you
I wouldn't
want to get on the
I wouldn't
road.
mind for you anything here for the next item.
Sure, that's fine. I'll stay for any finance-related stuff you guys want.
We like you, Mr. Crawford.
Uh,
So we like you.
oh, well, that's
Hang
great,
around with us.
I appreciate it. I like you guys too.
Cliff, the second item is mine. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, I gave you guys two handouts. David, I appreciate you, David, helped me get this stuff today organized. And the first document I handed out to you is out of our town ordinance. It's titled there, Chapter 7, Officers and Employees, Town Clerk and Town Treasurer. And I wanted to point out that I'm not complaining about this. If you look at the bottom item, item F, you see how it says, this is a duty for the town clerk. Deposits, make daily deposits, and then we got a 1992 code, state statute 1-10. Well, I looked that statute up, and that statute covers abstracting of land titles, and it applies to the county clerk, not our town clerk. So my point being, David provided, the second handout I gave you is David provided me with the updated 2022 version of the town clerk, city clerk duties. And you will see that making daily deposits is not included in the town clerk duty position. So the reason I'm talking about this is because Kelly has just taken office, and we need her, in my opinion, we need her to focus on what her duties and responsibilities are. Yes, she keeps some records, but with her not working here in town hall, it's impossible. Again, I'm back on the records request stuff. She can't cover all the records request stuff. And so I would like to make sure that everybody is on board with what Kelly is and what she's required to do. And this second handout that I gave you calls out specifically what she's supposed to do. And I highlighted that she serves as a clerk for the council, and that the person who serves as city clerk may be employed by the city to perform duties not related to his or her position as city clerk. So, you know, Kelly's got a job with a company, and she may or may not be interested in a job working here at Town Hall. So
I wouldn't.
we need to, we need, I guess what I'm saying is, or I'm asking, we as an organization, we're gonna have to adjust to our town clerk not working in Town Hall, is what I'm trying to tell you. And at the same time, we need to continue to try to help her as she gets more and more experience in her town clerk duties. And that's basically all I wanted to say on this item. I'm hoping that you guys will weigh in on it.
I'd like to.
Okay, go ahead, sir, I'm done. Go ahead.
Sure.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. David, I think this chapter 7 out of our town code, the town's required to redo its codes
Over 10 years.
every 10. Okay, I was gonna say 10 or 12, every 10. And we hire a company to go through and update. I think this line item you've got highlighted was put in there in error.
Yeah, it's
Frankie,
obviously it's an
can you
error, yes,
weigh
sir.
on?
Yeah,
Because I
what's the
remember
part that's
years
in here, the
ago,
daily deposit issue?
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
the
I mean,
treasurer's duty and
Yeah,
not the clerk.
it kind of depends. I know this is, I hate to use that answer, it depends, but typically the clerk has statutory duties that are set by state statute. And then ordinance duties that you guys may or may not provide that position also. Usually the clerk duties are very minimal statutorily. Keeper of the records, keeper of the seal. Occasionally you might see something about the clerk also doing deposits, but that's not necessarily it. But the state statutes do require municipalities to deposit the revenues that they receive on a daily basis, if at all possible. It doesn't actually say if at all possible, it says they're supposed to be deposited daily, because the point being that it's not safe for money to be sitting here overnight accumulating for days and days and days and not getting it deposited into the bank. That increases your risk of something bad happening. So whether it's the clerk's duties or whether it's the treasurer's duties, you know, you can devise the ordinance to say what you want it to say. If you don't want the clerk making deposits and you want to make it a function of the treasurer, then make your ordinance say that. Also, when you're making these ordinances, even though you make this the responsibility of the clerk, that doesn't mean the clerk, him or herself personally, has to do it. The office of the town clerk is responsible for those things, but it might not be the town clerk who does it. For example, the town clerk might be gone on vacation, and yet they're the keeper of the records and the minutes and the seal. Well, somebody else is going to be the keeper of the records and the minutes of the seal while that person's not there. The same thing would be true about daily deposits. If the treasurer or the clerk can't make them, it's the office of the clerk, office of the treasurer that's responsible. And that could be an assistant, that could be someone else that that person designates. So it's really kind of up to you. I mean, I've got many governments similar to you where the clerk is elected and is paid a very minimal salary, and all they do are the things that are in the statute, and that's it. Then I've got other governments like you where they say, you know what, we would like the town clerk to do not only the statutory duties, but this and this and this and this and this, and we're gonna make them an employee, and we're gonna pass an ordinance to compensate them for that part of what they're doing in addition to what the statutory duties.
It used to be that way.
Yeah.
Our clerk and our treasurer all worked at City Hall.
Right, right.
So, you know, when they went, during the hours, they were back here doing the work.
Right.
Now, we got one that's outside of the wall.
I get it, I understand, and that's a
Katie
change
That
for
went
you.
outside before.
Outside, Katie was outside.
Yeah, but just for a year.
Yeah.
And she still came down here and did a lot of work, just like she does now.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a, you know, it's an evolving world, it's an electronic world, we all get electronic access, we have other jobs, I mean, it's just one of those things you're gonna have to
Understand your
work
point.
through.
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Crawford, but, and I'm not trying to single her out, but, you know, Kelly, I'm gonna single her out. She may or may not want to do anything other than what's in the town clerk statutory.
That's absolutely correct.
You know, if Cliff or David and Shelley offer her or ask her to do stuff that's not in the statutory requirements, she may or may not want to, because she's got a career with another company. And she may be trying to meet some career milestones that, you know, she may not want to take a break and come down here and grab cash and run down to the bank. And you know, I need you guys to, you know, think about what I'm saying.
So I'm curious on that part. Who do you guys think does the deposits every day and goes to the bank? I mean, seriously. Who do you guys think does that?
You do, one of you all in here.
So this has already been implemented a long time ago with Tiffany, when Tiffany was here. So when I become treasurer, I'm the only one with the deposit key, and I do the deposits every night. If I'm not here, the deposit gets locked into the safe, and then the next morning, I go to the bank. I mean, this is like something that's not new.
And let me tell you, Frankie, I think needs some help on this. Several years ago, because town hall was still down where the library is, I don't know if it was an audit, but something, because our treasurer was just like Kelly, she did not work in town hall at all. And the other ladies in the office were making the deposits. And something in an audit or something said that wasn't correct. And the treasurer had to come in, just like what you're talking about, every day and pick up the deposit and take it to the bank.
Yeah, I'm not sure who or what auditor would have said that, but that's a very narrow interpretation of the concept.
See, and I just assumed, that's why when I saw this under clerk's duties, I thought, oh, that's wrong.
Being responsible for the daily deposit and actually making the daily deposit are not the same thing. I could be responsible for all the deposits of the revenue that go to my office, but I'm not the one doing the deposit, but I'm still responsible for it.
But even when Teresa was here, Teresa didn't take the money to the bank.
Huh?
Even when Teresa was here, she didn't take the money to the bank, City Hall did.
Right.
Yeah, it's not so much the person that's going, it's the oversight of whatever office you assign it to, and not so much the person. Now, whoever you assign the oversight of the daily deposit to, does that person need to be involved in reviewing something or looking at the deposit slip after it comes back from the bank validated? Sure, but that doesn't mean that person's gonna walk the deposit to the bank. I mean, that's not the idea of the statute or the duties.
So but the only reason that's still on there is because it just has been neglected all these years?
I would say, I don't know.
They got that company, I think Liberty, I think something, they're doing our, redoing it right now, yeah. And it should be ready in another couple of months, I think.
What, the
But,
10-year recodification?
yeah, they're going through page by page
Gotcha.
and updating everything, so that'll probably be taken off.
And I mean, if you wanna remove it, just issue an ordinance to remove it.
Yeah.
And then that gets codified in the suite of everything. And then it's gone. And you want to make it a responsibility of someone else, that's fine too.
Well, I didn't make copies of the next page. Again, this is out of our ordinance. I wasn't planning on talking off of this page. But Shelley, it does have the town treasurer on here, just like it has the town clerk over here. And it says the treasurer shall deposit daily funds received for the town in depositories as the board of trustees may designate.
Jim, my job, Warren.
And again, the concept is the office of the treasurer. If the treasurer's not available and there's an assistant treasurer or somebody we call the assistant treasurer, that's going to happen and occur. That's still your office making the deposit.
We do have a deputy clerk and a deputy treasurer.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just using an example.
Go on to C, discussion with possible action to rework the CDs at INTERBANK for possible better interest rates.
Hey, I want to throw a comment out. I saw a thing from Edward Jones that they were paying 5.5% on CDs a year. I believe it was a year CD that is FDIC insured.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, any certificate of deposit is going to be FDIC insured, whether it's at a bank or at a brokerage.
Well,
I mean, right now, you can get 4% on savings accounts with no limit on what you're doing. In other words, the interest rates are not like they were a year and a half ago where you couldn't get anything at all. You're now, I mean, if I could get 5% with no risk at all associated to it, I'm throwing every bit I've got into that. I mean, that's a guaranteed 5% covered by the FDIC. I'm not gonna lose my principal and I'm gonna get 5% interest. I mean, it's a no-brainer if you've got cash sitting around that you don't need for the next year. But don't start locking stuff up for 2 or 3 years. If you think you're gonna have to spend that money on a project or something, you gotta be careful. But right now, I mean, you can get 4.5% just in a bank account, just in a checking account, a money market account. So you might as well take advantage of that. And I'm not sure what you're getting on your CDs now at the bank, but
are they offering?
I don't know.
So, yes.
They better be.
I talked to LaDonna, and it's time for us to, anything $50,000 or more, they will rework and see if we can get a better interest.
take them up
But I
on it.
have to have minutes from the meeting and you guys taking a vote with that for her to proceed to go on and do that.
And I mean, if they're gonna do that without charging us a penalty, instead of, if we've got a $50,000 CD at 2%, they're willing to go to 3 and not cost us any money, that's a no-brainer.
But we
Now,
have to have a board vote.
Right.
And minutes to
but
take.
what you wanna make sure is, okay, they're not gonna charge a conversion fee or a rework fee or something that then's gonna eat 1% of it up, and now you're right back down to 2%. But if it sounds like they're offering to do it for nothing.
Can we shop that around?
Absolutely, you can shop it around. Yeah, but, the shopping around part's gonna, I mean, right now, 1-year CDs, 6-month CDs, you can get 4 or 5%. You're probably not gonna get a ton more than that, so you might do a bunch of shopping and you see 4.75 versus 4.65 or something like that. You're not talking about enough money to make a huge difference. If these are local banks and they're willing to be competitive with others, I would just as soon keep my money in the local bank, especially if it's insured by the FDIC, or we make this bank pledge collateral to us. Like if we've got more than $500,000 there, or more than $250,000 there, we would like not only the FDIC coverage, but a pledge of collateral.
And we have that.
Yeah, absolutely. We measure it every year to look to make sure that it's adequate. So, that's the benefit of having these local banks involved, is that they want to keep your local money here. And so you're fully protected. And if you were here back in '84, you probably remember when the bank went bankrupt. And luckily we had done all the work to get the insured money and the collateral so that we didn't lose anything at all. We lost absolutely nothing in that process. And
But
so,
as a board, we want to see what they're offering.
that, or you can see it as a board, or you could say, you know what, why don't we authorize the staff to go find the best rate they can in the circumstances that we have, and then let staff handle it. If you don't want to get into the minutia of what those rates are, but if you want to, sure, just say, bring back to us the most competitive rates you're seeing in local banks and others, and we'll make a decision. But they're willing, if the local bank is willing to rework a CD midterm, and are they midterm or are they maturing CDs?
I'll have to ask her, this is all.
Yeah, I mean, if they're midterm, then the bank's just doing you a favor.
Right.
My understanding, this is what they do. We do it every, so often.
Yeah, well, whatever the term of the CD is, 6 months or 1 year, then it matures, and the bank will call and say, what do you want to do with this money?
Yeah.
Roll it forward, take the interest, keep the principal and roll it forward. You want to cash the whole thing out. But I don't know if that's what they're offering to do because they're due, or they're offering to say, well, you locked into a 1-year CD at 1% 6 months ago, and now the rates are 4%, so we're willing to rework it. I don't know if that's the case, but if that's the case, that's just a gift.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I would certainly explore, with the cash flow that we've historically had here, that's 4 and 5% is gonna make you some money as opposed to 0.1 or 0.2%, which is what we've been getting, for the last decade. So I would certainly either authorize the staff to explore it, and then that way you can put it in the minutes, and then let the staff explore it, bring it back to you guys, and you can decide what you wanna do.
I make a motion to let Shelley see what the bank is doing, where the CD is, and then come back and see if we need to shop around.
get current rates from, yeah.
I'll second that, please.
Roll call, please.
Cliff,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Bert,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
That's why I wanted to hear sir explain that to us.
Nope, that's fine. Looks like you guys are about to go into executive session and talk about food trucks too, so although I love food trucks, I don't love executive sessions, so. Oh,
Well,
probably.
we have cookies.
Yeah, oh, you have cookies? Oh, well, that makes up part of it. But yeah, if you're done with me, I'll head on out, so.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, I sure appreciate
No
you
worries.
coming. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Frankie.
Again, let us know, anything else we can do. See you guys later.
Cliff, I have a question when you're ready.
Okay. Go ahead.
My question is, back up on item B, that second item that I have my initials on.
Yes, sir?
What did we, I couldn't hear you guys. What did we decide? We're gonna wait on the company that's reworking our ordinances for the correction on that?
Yes.
Is that what we decided?
Yes.
I wasn't looking for a vote. I mean, there's no need to vote on anything on it.
We could do it.
So once we get those updated ordinances, we can double check it.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll take
Before
that
we
as an
approve.
action item. I'll double check it myself.
Okay,
All
that'd be
right.
great.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
You bet.
I can't hear very well.
D, discussion with the possibility of action to approve the food truck ordinance with changes as prepared by the town attorney. You'll find that in your packet.
Yeah, I've got questions and issues with some of it, but you guys go ahead.
Okay, we still have to put in the fees. I thought we had those fees in there.
I don't think we ever did. There is a point in here that or two that I questioned.
Okay.
Bear with me just a second, I'm looking for one of them. Okay, under section 5 on page 2, about in the middle, it's got limitations. An applicant of a food vendor shall not, of course, private property, residential, 100 feet of the school, 100 feet of an existing restaurant cafe, or 200 feet with an event staged on public property unless licensee has been pre-approved by the town administrator. I would like to see the town, and I guess this covers it, because it's within 200 feet of a special event. I would like to see the town be able to exercise two different things. One is to be able to prevent any food truck in a special event other than local, which I'm going to get to in a minute. And I would also like to see the town be able to waive the food truck fee for certain special events. So it would be up to the town's discretion. So if there wanted to be a big food truck thing here with 40 food trucks come in and set up to bring people into the community, I would like to see the town have the authority to be able to waive the fees for that one particular event.
Will they still be collecting information such as health department certificates?
Yeah, that would be that's my thought, yes.
So they still have to come in and get a permit for it, it just the fee would be waived for a
Correct.
certain event.
Yes, correct. In the next page, item 3 at the very top, any mobile food vendor that also owns and operates a commercial kitchen, restaurant, cafe, or other eating establishment is already licensed by the State Department of Health. That, I think, is supposed to say they are anyone who has a commercial kitchen within the town limits of Hennessey is exempt from this, because the way this reads, anybody that's got a commercial kitchen would include places like Chick-fil-A and all of your big ones, so I think that's misworded.
Yeah, because we said brick and mortar of Hennessey is what we said.
Correct.
And can I make a comment on the, where you said park mobile food vendor within 100 feet of an existing restaurant, cafe, or other eating establishment? Let's just say Family Cafe, 81 Grill, Mercantile. That still puts any of those food vendors within that INTERBANK parking lot. And that was one of our biggest concerns, because we had a food vendor that would come in and just park in the INTERBANK lot. And that still puts them within that, outside that 100 feet. I thought we were talking like 200 feet on that one from the restaurants, and that would prevent that issue.
I think it should be 300 feet myself.
I mean, I'm okay with that, but,
I mean, that's a block. And
Yeah.
This is 300 feet, I feel like they should.
The thing is that, my biggest thing is I want to protect our local restaurants. Of course, I've got one here too, I get that, but at the same time these are my friends out here that own restaurants. I want them to succeed just as much as me. But if you have, a large vendor come in such as Chick-fil-A, look how much that takes from our smaller mom and pop shops.
But parking them somewhere else another 100 feet away, does that prevent that from happening?
It helps. We've seen it in some larger towns when we throw the cruise in Oklahoma. We've done it in a couple other towns where we park the food trucks further, like basically on the other side of the square where it's almost a block away. And we have seen that people actually try to, go to the local restaurants instead of the food trucks. Yes, the food trucks are there to make money. I get that. But should we be taking away from our locals that provide for our school, provide for our little league teams, all these smaller items that these food trucks do not?
I agree, I'm just saying, I didn't know if that would cause that, if they're not parked at INTERBANK and they're parked another block away, does that actually affect?
It actually does.
Okay.
All right, 14th.
There's a lot of studies on that one. In fact, I just came
At
back from a
14th.
Golden Chick conference, and that actually came up,
Okay.
and we had talked about that.
I mean, when do we get it right? Like, what if, like, INTERBANK invites them to be on their parking lot? Where does that go to the city to override them on their private land?
That
Well,
still comes up with the city ordinance.
Yeah, the ordinance would cover that.
So if it's a special event and they invite them, they pay their $25 or whatever, and it's a special event, correct? Let's say, I'm just gonna throw this out there, maybe they're having an open house. That's a special event for them. So could they not pay their $25 and have it in their parking lot?
I mean, that could be something that, the town could say, hey, look, if you're having a special event for your business, I mean, that could be done, but like if they're just wanting to come in and, sit down and sell, that could be an issue.
I think the problem is, and having talked with the attorney some time ago about this ordinance, I think the problem is we can we can get it so lengthy to try to cover every little scenario, and we're still gonna miss something. Yeah, we're still gonna miss something. So,
I mean, I think we have a really good setup here. I mean, the basis of a good setup, we really do. And I think honestly, when it comes down to the restaurant side of things, the restaurant owner side of things, you know, a lot of this, you know, just except for, of course, the one where you stated where a commercial kitchen, that was one of my concerns, where if it's within city limits, you own the commercial kitchen, let's just say, Eat It Up, they own a commercial kitchen. They also have a food truck.
sure.
I feel that, you know, she should be perfectly fine to set up, you know, out here on Highway 81, as she normally does. That's perfectly fine. She's a local, bringing in local, you know, money, which disperses into our local economy.
And should be exempt from the
And that,
footage because she may wanna set up right in front of her building.
exactly. But as it is worded, Chick-fil-A owns a commercial kitchen in Stillwater.
Well, that's why I
So
said,
that's-
this has gotta be fixed.
Yeah, that's gotta be fixed, yeah.
Every food truck's got a commercial kitchen somewhere.
Exactly.
Probably,
And well, actually, a food truck is a commercial kitchen.
yeah.
So theoretically, if they wanted to come down on you guys and say, oh yeah, I have a commercial kitchen, here it is, that's all it takes. Now, you may want to add the wording in it that they are, that they have a commercial kitchen within city limits in their part of the town, or however you want to word that, that'd probably be a little bit more safer as well. But, you know, that, yeah, I wholly agree with you, that needs to be changed.
What kind of fee would
For some reason, I thought we agreed on $100 a day, and then we took the annual fee away.
Oh,
I could be mistaken.
I thought we agreed on 50, so.
I thought we did
Maybe
50.
I mean, 50's fair.
I thought we did an annual of like 250.
That's what I was remembering.
Oh, don't get me wrong, I don't remember that one.
Okay.
I don't remember the annual.
I was thinking 50 and 250.
Now, of course, with that being said, with those annuals and $50 being special events, those can be, now on those special events, do those have to be logged with the town, or does it have to be voted on by the town trustees? I mean, that might be another question that we need to ask. So I could sit there and have
It says
something
the
in
town administrator.
So administrator would do
Town
that?
administrator does.
Okay, that'll work.
And I'm thinking anything, correct me if I'm wrong here, but anything within 200 feet of a special event, that would cover the the cruise. Because it is basically from one end to the other.
Yeah, I mean, this year, sadly, we were so inundated with cars, we ran out of places. We had cars all the way out to Howdy's, actually. I mean, next year, I'm gonna have my hands extremely full, just trying to make sure we have enough spaces for things, but.
So,
I mean, I guess then you need to dictate what the boundaries of a special event is then.
Well, that's
And that would
why,
have to be
that's
the
why I
administrator.
think that's why I think the town administrator should be able to make a determination at special events where no food trucks are allowed except local.
Hmm?
And
But do the locals need to pay the yearly?
no,
They have a kitchen.
they would be exempt.
No.
They would be exempt if they're local.
Is what the fire department does at the wine festival a food truck?
Well, there you go.
Well,
I don't
the
know.
thing is that if it's
But
a
that's
by
local.
donation.
But they're doing donations, it's not.
It's not considered, yes, by donation, it's not considered,
Got it.
it's not,
Concession.
doesn't fall under health state department rules.
It's highly recommended you donate $10.
Yeah, you can put a recommended donation amount, but if someone sits there and only donates $3, you can't sit there and say, hey, no.
They only get a half sandwich then. Just kidding.
Yeah, that's where, you know, the health department kind of gets locked in there. You have to be careful with that one. That's the same thing with like bake sales. If it has anything to do with hot or cold foods, it doesn't fall under the cottage food law. And then, and if they set a price and it's a hot or cold food, theoretically, they are supposed to have a Oklahoma Health Department license. So that's where you get, in there. And then, of course, then the state wants their cut on the taxes. So that's one of those things you have to be kind of careful with when it comes to selling a food. Because if someone really wanted to make a big stink, they could. I mean, I know Cliff, you kind of know all about that. 'Cause
Yeah.
You've been on that side, so. Health department rules, they're just massive, and it's just, the books you just can't keep up with. But they're pretty defined when it comes to the cottage laws and, hot or cold, needing to have a health department license. And if
water.
it's, yeah,
You gotta have water.
exactly. So they're very strict on that.
They are. Perceived changes.
Yes.
Okay, so on line D, mobile park, we're changing that to 300 feet, is that correct? On page 2?
I wrote down 200.
You wrote 200?
I mean, split it in half and go 250 and call it good.
Yeah.
Splitting hairs at that point.
Who's gonna go measure that?
Brian?
So I was talking with one of our ladies here in town who has a boutique, and because of the Chick-fil-A bus, she has gotten 2 customers from out of town who shops here in Hennessey now, because they stopped at the Chick-fil-A and got a sandwich and looked down Main Street. And she said now they have two ladies from out of town that return quite often to her boutique. So in a sense, I totally get where you're coming from.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not taking that away.
No.
But
And that
in
can
a
happen,
sense,
it does
that's
happen.
where she gained customers because of that. So I don't want to, I wouldn't suggest making it too expensive where nobody wants to come, because
Well, we don't want to limit. We
No.
want them to come, we just want them to make sure that they
Follow
pay
the
their fair
guidelines.
share along with our, to be able to allow our local businesses to compete as well.
so that's what I'm saying. So is it really going to matter if it's 100 feet or 200 feet if they pay their $50, whatever, $100, whatever y'all charge?
Yeah, it really can. The reason is that the studies show that, so like I said, I just came back from a conference actually this morning. They stated that within, each restaurant has basically a bubble of influence. And within those bubble of influences, when a food truck comes in, that bubble of influence does get diverted. So the psyche that comes around to it's about 200 feet of visual preference. So if I am sitting at the light and I see a food truck and I see 81 Grill, now you have a visual preference and a psyche that comes out, well, now I have a split decision. Well, the thing is like, oh, I can come eat at 81 Grill at any time. I'm gonna decide to go to the food truck. That's where that psyche comes in. It's more of, you can't, you want what you normally can't have. And that's where the competition comes in, because if they start just coming in and coming in and coming in, and they sit too close, you're gonna see your local businesses go down. So, I mean, I love it.
And I
She's
go
got
by Monday, who's open,
But even if the
You know,
food truck was just
yeah.
at the
So
park,
what's the
Chick-fil-A's been here
difference?
3 or 4 times, and I've never been there.
I haven't been there.
That sell t-shirts and stuff.
It's
on Thursday or something like that, isn't it?
I've seen them
Where's that
there, you know what I'm
difference
saying?
They don't
I eat at his
require
place at least once a week.
That's not an answer.
My only deal with all
yeah,
of
it is
it,
actually, because the thing is,
For service
if
and
I
all that
allow
stuff would be
a food
better,
truck to come in here, do you know most food
maybe
trucks
we'd
don't actually
repeat
pay the
more
city
their
taxes?
place.
I get that, but.
Chick-fil-A has a better product.
What I'm
I'm gonna
saying
eat
is,
there.
you're bringing in t-shirt places.
I mean, I don't know what, how you get any better
Look
argument
where I
than
placed
that.
them. I placed
So
them
what's our
all the way down
consensus?
there, giving them outside that.
I can tell you when Pizza Hut had,
This is
I
just
think
what
the
she
main
said.
thing is, item B, I don't care.
There it is, I really don't.
I heard 200 3 times.
I placed them all the way down there.
And
so
then
customers
vote.
don't have to walk all the way down there.
And the 50 and
The thing
250?
is, I actually, the main
He said
focus of the show
Okay.
is right here.
And I'm not taking
To make
away
those
from her.
differences?
Her.
No, no, no.
This was,
It's
she
a
brought it up.
legitimate concern.
Okay,
She can
okay,
use-
okay, okay, that's enough.
Sorry.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the, oh, it doesn't have an ordinance number. The food truck ordinance with the changes on section 5, we move that to 200 feet. And in section 6, that the restaurant, commercial kitchen is owned in the Hennessey city limits.
One more. And establish the fees.
Oh, and then establish the fee of $50 each day and $250 for each year.
I second that. Roll call, please.
Are we doing physical
That's a good
Randy.
question. Are we doing physical year or length of year?
We're on a, I don't know,
I
since
think.
the vote's on the floor.
Yeah, the
we-
vote's on the floor, we can't discuss
Oh,
it.
sorry.
Okay, Randy,
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Bert,
Yes.
Okay. E, executive session pursuant of Title 25 OS Section 3007B1 to discuss applicants received for the town administration position. Change Colton Shaw from temporary to permanent full-time status in the street, parks, and water department, and return David Traynor to the hourly wage and duties that were in place prior to February 24, 23. Vote to convene to executive session.
A second.
Roll call, please.
Cliff,
Yes.
Bert,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Harold,
Can I recuse myself from item B?
Yes, but I think. Oh, no, I wish.
What?
I think you can go to executive session.
Okay, I mean, I'd go,
I think-
but I-
Yeah, I
yeah.
think you can.
I mean, I want to go in the executive
Yeah,
session.
yeah.
Yes. But I want
Just
to
when
recuse
you
myself
come
from
out.
item B.
Yeah.
Okay.
Harold, we have a vote on the floor. We
Yeah.
have a vote on the
Done.
floor.
Oh, we're
What?
not done.
We have a vote on the floor.
Yes, I said yes.
Okay. Dave,
Yes.
thank you.
I vote to reconvene.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Sorry. Right, that was Cliff and Randy.
Mhm.
Okay, Cliff,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Bert,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
F, discussion with possible action to approve, deny hiring a town administrator from the applications received from OMMS. We decided that the applicants weren't what we're looking for, and we're going to ask for, to go back and review some, reopen up the application time. G is discussion with possible action to approve, deny, change Colton Shaw from temporary to permanent full-time status in the street, parks, and cemetery department.
I make a motion to hire Colton Shaw, full-time for the streets, parks, and cemetery department.
I'll second that. Roll call, please.
Randy,
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
Bert,
Yes.
Harold,
That's same.
okay. Dave,
Yes.
Discuss with possible action to approve, deny returning David Traynor to the hourly wage and duties that were on place prior to February 24, 23.
Make a motion to deny.
Second.
I'm joking.
what?
It says approve or deny.
Roll
I
call.
don't know that we have to take any action on. Maybe we do. David?
Can you finish out the month?
Yes.
Okay, because that'll give us some time to get an interim. If you could do that for us, we would appreciate that.
I can do as little as I've been doing and just come in here a couple times a day and still be the same help that I've been.
Okay. We will get somebody to be a new intern by August 1st. Discussion with possible action, huh?
Oh, I didn't know if we needed.
Oh, did you vote on that?
We probably don't need a motion on that, if he agrees.
Okay. Discussion with possible action to allow Oklahoma Municipal Management Services to expand the search for town administrator per executive director's discretion. And that's what we discussed and we are going to do.
I make a motion to expand the search for town administrator at the discretion of OMMS's executive director.
A second.
Roll call, please.
Bert,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
J, discuss the possible action to approve the quote from Dobbs Construction for the complete build of the cemetery restrooms.
We don't,
No, he apologized, he hadn't had time to work it up with the siding instead of rock exterior.
Okay.
He will get that to me, I think he said by Monday.
Okay. We will table that at this time. New business, any matter not known to which could not have been reasonably foreseen prior to the time of posting the agenda in accordance with the section 311-9 title 25 OS. Citizen comments?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we just have all of the town's investments at one bank? Or do we have some at both banks?
Shelley, can you answer that, please?
We have our full account for INTERBANK,
Oh, you're spending.
court, meter. You guys caught me off guard. There's 4 accounts at CSB. Court, meter,
But we don't have any CDs or money accounts?
no, all the CDs I believe are at INTERBANK.
Okay.
No, I can't even think of the other 4. There's 4 at CSB though.
Council report, David?
Nothing, sir.
Harold? Bert?
Nope.
Randy? Cliff? No. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Cliff,
Yes?
Harold,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Bert,
Yes.
Randy.
Yes.
Hennessey Utilities Authority Board of Trustees, regular meeting, July 13th, 2023, Town Hall Council Room. Call to order and roll call, please.
Randy,
Yes. Here.
Bert,
Here.
Cliff,
Here.
Harold,
Here.
Dave.
Here.
Consider approval of consent agenda, minutes of the meeting, approval of claims as follows: June purchase orders, 129,840.90. July purchase orders, 102,408.15. July meter deposits is 0. Treasurer's report.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda for the utilities.
Second. Roll call, please.
Harold,
Yes.
Randy.
Bert seconded that.
Oh, Bert did. I thought that was your voice. Okay, Bert,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Citizen comments? Other scheduled business, discuss, accept, approve, deny, reject, and/or take action on the following. A, discussion with possible action to approve pay utility service company $32,656 for the maintenance on the town's 3 water towers. And we have a contract with them, so this is just part of that contract that we need to pay them.
Is the work, I'm sorry,
No.
Cliff, I've got a couple of questions.
Okay.
Is the work done already?
It's a process of being done. They paint the outside, sandblast paint the outside, sandblast paint the inside, coat the inside. And like today, they did an inspection on all of them, they do a periodic inspection just to make sure the coatings that they put on are still viable.
Oh, okay.
So it's a continual thing.
Okay, so this is three water towers.
Mhm.
Now, we just did the water plant last year. Is it an annual requirement, David?
No, the interior, I think, is every 3 years when I was a manager, and the outside is every 5 years.
Okay.
But they do it, as needed, they go in and survey the coatings and the surface and everything that has to do with the water tower, and then they determine whether or not they need to do anything. Like I said, they did the clear well last year. I believe the year before they did the tower behind the street shop, and then 2 years before that, they did the tower behind the, but that, they weren't doing it then, that 2 years.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this fee is an annual maintenance agreement. And
So they're doing PM, preventive maintenance.
yes, and this,
That's it.
but this covers us for if there's any welds that need to be repaired,
Yeah.
painting needs to be done. But I think this is an annual fee, am I right?
Yes, it's an annual fee, it's amortized,
Okay.
so
I
we're
got it.
paying less later
Okay.
on.
I got it. So it doesn't matter what we did at the water plant tower. It has to go through this process also.
Yeah, and the repairs we made to the plant, David, didn't affect that tower, it was all.
Yeah,
I got it.
the plant itself, yeah.
Thank you.
Tower.
Thank you, David.
Make a motion to pay the utility service company $32,656 for the maintenance on the town's three water towers.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Harold,
Yes.
Bert,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Cliff.
Yes.
When the opportunity comes to paint the big water tower, I really want to talk about that before we just paint it silver again. Because part of my thing, my big proposal was to get a logo, actual logo on that tower, if it was feasible. But I just wanted to, when that time comes, could I have a conversation about it?
Absolutely.
And it may be that it's too expensive to go away, but I'd at least like the opportunity to visit that.
Yes.
I'd call it, put a scrolling sign around.
I like
That'd
that.
be cool.
Yeah.
B, discussion with possible action to rework the CDs at INTERBANK for possible better interest rates. I think that's a no-brainer. I think we need to do that.
Yeah, we've already voted that we need to do it under this
Yeah, Katie
agenda.
told me I had to put it
Well,
on
you
both.
do, we've
'Cause I
gotta
didn't
do it,
know
because some of the
what
CDs are
areas.
under this one.
But I would like to check both banks and see if either bank will do better. Well, check other places too, to see what will do better on our interest rate.
So we need a motion.
I make a motion to rework our CDs at INTERBANK.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Cliff,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Bert,
Yes.
Harold,
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Can I go back to A for just a second? I know this has been voted on, and I'm not advocating changing that vote whatsoever. I would like to ask that company to look at this tower. We've got radio antennas on this tower, and we've got, I think everybody has seen, the buzzards for the last 3 or 4 years are roosting up there. And I see them roosting on those antennas from time to time. And those are big birds, and I'm afraid they may damage those. And I was thinking, on that rail, you've seen these spike things that stick up, to see if that company could put those to try to get those birds encouraged to go roost somewhere else. Besides that, I kind of get the feeling they're watching me.
I think that's a very good point.
We are getting older, Bert.
I know. David, would you be able to ask that company to do
Yes, I was
that?
gonna call about the painting and see when it was due, and then I'll call about the
Thank you.
vulture prevention.
That'd look really good with our logo up there. That would look really good.
Oh, yeah.
And we want colored lights, so we can change them throughout the seasons.
We'll send you up to change the light bulbs. Yeah.
Hazard pay.
I'm going to put that under new business. Any matter not known as which could not have been reasonably foreseen prior to the time of posting the agenda in accordance with the section 311-9 title 25 OS. Any other new business? Citizen comments? Councilperson report? Randy? Bert? Harold? Dave?
Nothing, sir?
Means we did a really good job and we don't have anything else to talk about.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Cliff,
Yes?
Randy,
Yes.
Bert.
No.
He can't hear either.
Yes, I'll vote yes.
Okay. Harold,
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Okay.
Just trying to be different and difficult.
It don't matter.